Hello, welcome to Truth Sentinel episode 44. And this episode is about world events, recapping past episodes and linking them to world events. Also about talking about simulated universe theory. I'll be joined by Anthony and Seth Davis from Two Real News. And we'll just be having some general chats this week. Developments with Truth Sentinel. We've got our own website now. The domain name is www.truthsentinel.co.uk. That's www.truthsentinel.co.uk. Go and check it out. It's a work in progress, but we appreciate any feedback. There's a chat room in there. There's a voicemail, so you can contact us. And the latest episode will be up there. Otherwise, you can find us on YouTube under Truth Sentinel. So please settle back, listen to today's episode. Thanks for sticking with us. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our show, and there'll be many more to come. So a very quick look at the news today. Really quick. I'm just going to literally go down the page. How did a normal young man change our thinking about the universe? That's Stephen Hawking's there. And we're going to be talking about the universe later, me and Anthony, and the origins of life. That'll be in the second part of the show. What else is going on? IS fighters laying mines in Palmyra. By the way, just in case you think I'm just looking at mainstream news, I am, but I'm not necessarily saying this is true. I'm just looking at it. So what else are they saying in the mainstream? They're saying that racial attacks are like modern day lynchings. As I mentioned on Facebook, the friend of the guy that did this shooting happens to be black. So I think there's some confusion that needs clearing up. And his friend also said that the church was not the original target. And here's a quote from his friend. He never said anything racist. Most racists I know, and I do know some, living in Ukraine, you meet a fair amount, to be honest, and most people who are racist are actually quite open about it, if you ask them. I think his friend would know, and why would he have a black friend anyway? It doesn't quite add up to me. What do you think? I've been seeing a lot of these kind of articles on the BBC lately. Earth enters new extinction phase. Lots of articles about how we're destroying the planet and how we're being killed off, basically. It does seem to me to tie into eugenics a lot. It seems to be almost like people are being prepared to face the fact that we need to cull the population, allow people to die quicker. That's already happening, as mentioned with schemes like the Liverpool Care pathway, which literally does advocate older people dying as quickly as possible. But this article is just about how the death rates have been going up. Here it says since 1900, more than 400 more vertebrates have disappeared. I don't know. I just seem to be seeing a lot of these articles on the BBC, and the solution seems obvious. You need to cut down the population. It just seems that people are being prepared to accept the fact that we're a bit of a plague upon the earth. Let's have a quick look, see what else is going on. There's Rachel Dolezal, the woman who said she was black when she wasn't. You know what? I mean, it's not a great thing to do, but there's worse things worse sins being committed out there. I think that's enough for today. Let's get on with the show. So I'm joined by Seth Davis from Two Real News, based in Washington, and also Anthony Kay from Kayseri in Turkey. I'm still here in Odessa, Ukraine, and today we're going to just talk about articles linked to past episodes of Truth Sentinel and general world events, and just talk about stuff that's on the Truth Sentinel radar that we might chat about in upcoming episodes. So first of all, I just want to quickly welcome Anthony from Turkey.
Hello, Scott. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Good to have you back. And Seth, how are you over there in the States?
Oh, I'm doing all right, Scott. Just staying busy here, and it's a complete pleasure to join you and your audience today.
It's always a pleasure to have you with us as well, Seth. I hope you're well. I know you've been having some hard times recently, but hopefully things will sort out.
Oh, most definitely. Looking at the news here, as it does every day, definitely helps put some stuff into perspective there as far as making you realize that a lot of the problems you're facing in your daily life could always be worse. I mean, you know what I mean? You're looking at something like oh man, I'm going to have a hard time paying the bills this week, as opposed to, oh, I could literally be in a concentration camp right now or something, equivalency of starving to death in the street in some third world country. So be grateful for what you have.
Exactly. There's all kinds of things that are much worse, like traffic accidents, and that brings me to one of my first topics, which is a woman whose brother was killed in a traffic accident. Has got to meet the man who was given his face in a pioneering transplant operation. We did an episode on head transplants where we interviewed Valery Spiridonov, a Russian who's going to have his head transplanted onto another body, and we had a chat with him. But this caught my eye just because I thought this is a very strange situation. A documentary by Channel 9 in Australia is going to show the moment Rebecca Avasano meets Richard Norris from Virginia, USA, who was severely injured in a shotgun accident about 15 years ago. And they're going to get to meet, and she's going to see her brother's face that was transplanted onto him. And I just thought that would be a pretty weird situation to deal with. What do you think, Seth?
Oh, I agree. It'd be a very weird situation to deal with. I think a lot of the ramifications of this sort of medical technology of these new operations and the way the medical state has progressed here has infinitely positive sort of potential to it, but it also has some negative and some definitely horrifying, or at least jarring or scarring sort of ramifications as well. And I mean, looking at all of this right now, it starts with this of the face transplant, which personally, as we've seen work here and everything, is a lot more likely to become a modern, much more commonplace sort of an operation than the human head transplant, which is still about 2 years away, about a year and a half away from right now.
Yeah, I mean, some of the advances in technology in the medical world and other parts of technology are becoming really futuristic. But anyway, the article I was reading, Barry Jones, former president of the British Association of Plastic Surgeons, said that he's not against recipients meeting donor families if both parties want to, but he hopes they have been counselled properly, and I think that probably would be pretty critical. But anyway, I wanted to move on to a more local story, local to Odessa, Ukraine, where I am at the moment. And Odessa, Ukraine has been appointed a new governor. And he has a very difficult name to pronounce, but I'm going to try. Saakashvili. And he's been appointed governor of Ukraine's southern Odessa region. And this was a bit of a surprise move because Saakashvili, I told you I had difficulty pronouncing it. He's from Georgia. He's the ex-president of Georgia. And he's been appointed governor here, and that's pretty unheard of. I mean, imagine that happened in the States, Seth. How do you think people would take to that?
Oh, it'd be pretty strange. It'd be as though the president of Mexico were to just come up and suddenly become the governor of Utah or California or something like that. It's rather strange.
Yeah,
or an Austrian bodybuilder.
Yeah, oh, exactly. Very well put, Anthony. Very well put.
Yeah, I was just thinking of Schwarzenegger as well.
Yeah.
It would be pretty
Except
strange.
That would be California, not California.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but anyway, Anthony, can you give us a bit more details on this story?
Sure, yeah. Saakashvili is a bit of a controversial figure. He is wanted, we could say, in Georgia at the moment. There are some criminal proceedings in which he's involved. But there's some suggestion, and I think it may be true, that these are politically motivated. You remember when Yanukovych became president of Ukraine, and he immediately threw his political opponent, who he beat, into prison. Saakashvili seems like he might be in a similar bind in respect to Georgia, but he certainly is. I mean, people have very mixed feelings about him there. However, one of the things that he is and was known for was cleaning up corruption, and that's I think that's why it is a very interesting appointment. You know, Odessa we know that Ukraine in general is and has for a long time been crippled by corruption, and Odessa is in some ways at the center of that. You know, it's also at the center of the sex trafficking trade in Europe and so on. So basically, when Georgia came out of the dissolution of the USSR, its economy was in pretty bad shape, and it just went from bad to worse. The place was run by, you know, mafia. There were frequent killings in the streets. Every part of society was infused with corruption, and he came to office on the pledge that he would clean it up, as many other ex-Soviet politicians have done. They have made that promise and haven't come through, but he's the one who did actually come through. He among other things, he fired pretty much his entire police force and started another one, just, you know, out of whole cloth.
I wonder what Ukrainian people will think of this, though. You know, for him to become governor.
I don't know, and I think, there's a tendency in Ukraine, and it's already happened. One of the members of the Yatsenyuk government, I think his name is Lyashkov, has tried to demonize Saakashvili and say that he's going to sell the province of Odessa to Russia. That's the claim of this guy in the national government. They're already trying to cast him on one side or the other side. You know, pro-Russian people are saying, oh, they don't like him because he's a nationalist and he's a criminal and so on, which is a vast overstatement. But yeah, his reforms in Georgia had a transformative effect on the economy, I would say. The economy is doing immeasurably better now than it was before he came to office because of his big corruption cleanup. And so in that respect, I think he is a wise choice potentially. But it is a bit strange. I mean the president had to make him a Ukrainian citizen and then immediately make him a governor. So,
well, apparently Poroshenko made the announcement at a televised event in Odessa. With Mr. Saakashvili standing beside him. It's like introducing him to Odessa. Here's your new governor. He doesn't actually come from Ukraine, but hope you like him, you know.
But he's famous there. I mean, everybody in the former USSR knows Saakashvili, so it's not like a new face, you know. But still, I think it would have been a shock for some people. Yeah,
well, we'll see how it goes anyway. I mean, if he's good at reforming the economy, he might be welcome in some ways, because the value of the Ukrainian hryvnia has halved over the last year, which has kind of benefited me coming from the UK, but unfortunately not the rest of the population over here.
Well, let's hope for a good outcome. I mean, Ukraine, you know, desperately needs some good news, so let's hope it is a good appointment.
Yeah, indeed. Another article that caught my eye was just briefly was a new drone that's coming out, the Hummingbird drone, which I saw on the Popular Science website, and that was basically an American Special Forces miniature drone called a Black Hornet, which, as the article said, is the kind of drone that scares people, because if you think of the movie Minority Report, with those little miniature drones flying into rooms and trying to find people so they can report people who are then probably going to be executed. But Seth, I know you had something to say about drones today, so I just wanted to pass over to you and find out what you had to say about drones.
Okay, well, we've got some pretty interesting stuff to talk about here with drones. I know we did a wonderful episode of True Sentinel on the subject. I mean, not a wonderful subject there, but a very much more reasoned look at this than either a lot of the war hawks or the other people that you'll have there that try and promote this. But recently, as of May 17th of this year, we've got an article here out of the Long War Journal. This is U.S. drone strike kills 6 jihadis in North Waziristan. The U.S. launched its first drone strike in Pakistan in more than a month, killing at least 6 jihadis, including, quote, foreigners, in an area along the Afghan-Pakistan border that is known to host a variety of terrorist groups. And that's just this year of the newest sort of a deal there that everybody is completely on board with, I guess. It's the new war is peace type of a thing. But from 2013 here, this is out of the London Telegraph. We have U.S. Senator says drones death toll is at 4,700. This is 2 years ago, guys. So I think really we need to start wondering, how high is it now? And also, we need to factor this in as to why the United States and why the United Kingdom are looked at the way they are around the rest of the world. And I know Anthony should probably know firsthand there that Australia is right there.
Yeah, that's right. The Australian government currently leases drones from the Israeli military, but they're planning to buy some of their own this year or next year. They'll be buying the, I don't remember the name of the drones, Predators, perhaps?
Yep, Predator drones.
Yeah, or Herons. Yeah, I think it's Herons. Okay. So the Herons are the enormous ones here that stay in the air for days. So they're going to buy those, and it's very much a political thing, you know, to protect the country from boat people and so on. It's a very expensive form of bullshit, basically. But I wanted to mention something that we didn't mention in that episode, which is the role that drones are playing in the conflict in Ukraine, which is larger than I would have thought. A lot of the soldiers on the Ukrainian side have got these handheld drones, which they launch to try and discover enemy positions, and they're literally, I mean they are like, you see footage of these guys, you know, launching these things, and they're like boys with toys, and that's part of the worry of drones, I think, is that there is a kind of computer gamey sort of feeling about a lot of it, you know. They're kind of firing it off over the horizon. It's a big adventure, and that really doesn't match with the reality of war, and especially at the moment that war, which is a particularly, you know, vicious and dark and frankly pointless one. Yeah,
I just wanted to say something here. Yeah, I think you're right about the sort of computer game aspect of it, but also, in the past, if the governments wanted to kill people in another country, they had to get public acceptance. They had to put troops on the ground. Now it seems like they're just not even bothering to do that anymore. There's probably, you know, it seems like they're just killing people without even consulting with anyone these days. They're not putting boots on the ground. They're not you know, consulting the public. They're just going ahead and doing stuff secretly. What do you think, sir?
I absolutely agree with you, Scott, on that one. I'd say Yemen is another great example of that. Of the U.S. and the United Kingdom, they're caring nothing about what the public supports or believes with any of this, and they're just going to go attack whoever, whenever. I mean, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, we've known for a while there, is but a front for Saudi Arabia. I mean, they get to use this to menace the entire region of the Arabian Peninsula. The Saudi Arabian government is also leased and sold so many of these weapons by the United States government, who also provides armaments, all sorts of stuff, to bomb Yemen right now. It's being used because the Saudis aren't really having to do that much in ways of physical boots on the ground type stuff. They're just bombing the living crap out of the country, and I think that's what we're going to see more and more of, is as people are divorced from the reality of war and the reality of uber violence, and people just become inoculated to it.
That's right, yeah. And on top of that, it really puts the lie to this fiction that we were sold, you know, starting back in the 90s of you know, smart technology and how it's going to drastically reduce civilian casualties in war, because the drones have an unbelievably high rate of civilian casualties. It's one of the main, you know, signatures of a drone attack. I mean, and we've seen it over and over again. You mentioned North Waziristan, Seth, and it's been horrendous for the people there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking a region that most people here in the United States don't even know that the U.S. has been operating not only a drone strike program, but has been occupying and, quote, at war with. The United States is at war with Pakistan, is at war with Afghanistan, and Waziristan crossing the region there, or the borders of being its own autonomous region, is another thing most people don't even know, because nobody seems to care. I mean, we're talking about a government here, in my case, and I know in the case of Australia, the Australian government, or in the case of the British government, have a very long history of their own sorts of corruption and their own sorts of what they call military conflicts, but are pretty much just a genocide, just a foreign occupation, an aggressive land grab, resource grab, and a genocide of a bunch of the indigenous peoples. But the United States has truly gone above and beyond. We're talking about a country that has over 1,000 military bases and was fomented coups and, I believe, declassified about 55 foreign nations on over 70 occasions. Mm-hmm. I mean, in terms of wars, the United States, in just its history there, guys, has fought, I believe it was 89 wars in its entire history. from 1776 to now. Think about that. As much people just, oh, America and freedom and peace and democracy and all this stuff. Blood. That's all it is. That's all the entire history of this country is.
It's true, and I think another thing that's changed is like if you think back to the Second World War, you get these declarations on radio to make it quite clear countries were at war. You know, like we now declare war on Germany. You know, but these days they're just happening, and people aren't really tuning into the fact that they're going on. I think people in the UK would often think that they're not at war with anyone. You know, and maybe in the US sometimes as well, and other countries. But, you know, because there's no such declarations, it's just happening, you know.
Yeah, but the statistic came out a while ago that the UK has been at war for 99 out of the last 100 years. So if these people really believe that they're not at war, then they are mistaken, unfortunately.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And also with the drones, you know, people talk about collateral damage, you know, when, you know, sadly, you know, a family were killed when we were trying to kill this extremist, but you know, for that family, that's someone's sister or brother. You know, they just label it collateral damage. You know, but but I think at some point, some of the consequences of these wars that people don't realise they're involved in, and some of the consequences of this collateral damage are gonna come back and bite people at some point.
Definitely, and I'd say the collateral damage is beyond just somebody's sister or somebody's brother that's there, as we're talking large explosives that are being detonated here, or being missiles, quite literally, being hellfire missiles, I believe, being shot at these people, and they have what's called a double tap policy. So first responders and everything, meaning police, fire department people, medical workers, EMTs that are arriving on the scene there, or just general people from the community that are trying to help out, because maybe there are a bunch of people that were blown up in the first strike that have nothing to do with anything there, especially in things of like weddings, big gatherings of people, any sort of party, anything like that you can think of where there's a bunch of people together, because that's a lot of the cases where their high priority targets are out in the open. And it's absolutely disgusting, because they through for a second round and they just kill even more people. I mean, we have drone strikes here that are killing up to, in some cases, like 30 people, 40 people in one double tap maneuver.
And, and that's just the ones we get to hear about, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And what you said, Seth, about sorry, what you said, Scott, about coming back to bite us. I think in the case of North Waziristan, psychological researchers have gone into the area, because it is, I mean, the drone strikes there have created an epidemic of mental illness, and there are people going in there just to try and work out what is psychologically wrong with the people there who are living under these drones. And one of the things that they've found is that the children who are living under the drones are probably the most likely to be the terrorists and the militant Islamists of the future, because of the psychological effects this is having on their communities. You know, the level of fear that they're experiencing is going to, at some point, turn to hatred of the West, and then we're going to go through this whole cycle again. So, you know, it could hardly be much more destructive, you know.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, people are very busy looking after, raising their children in some of our home countries, and they're watching soap operas on TV. But at some point in the future, it's going to affect their children. You know, if there's going to be terrorism consequences to some of the things that have occurred in this generation, it's going to affect their families. So I think people need to sort of take it seriously. But we're going to move on to the next topic. Another article I came across was about MH370, a topic we've covered quite a lot on Truth Sentinel, but we're going to do an update soon at some point. But the article I came across, which I think was on a site called Master Herald, it was talking about the investigators saying basically they've yet to find any debris of the missing Malaysian Airlines flight MH370, which disappeared in March 2014. But the investigating team, which is a combination of Malaysians, Australians and Chinese, said they would most likely leave the plane wreckage on the ocean floor if and when they find it. They said they would just get the parts they would need, basically, which is the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, and they wouldn't make an attempt to raise it because it'd be too expensive and laborious. And I just thought, well, if this is a cover-up, which it really does show all the signs of being one, well, that's not really good enough. And I know other people have expressed the same views, because people are going to, it's a bit like the Bin Laden incident. People want to see some kind of evidence. It's going to be too easy to cover up otherwise. But Anthony, I know you've also been looking at other articles related to MH370. So what do you think about this?
Well, that's right. Yeah, I wanted to mention a couple of developments here, just briefly, because we will go into it, I think, in far more depth in a future episode. But the ocean search that you mentioned, it started by working out where MH370 was when it fell off primary radar in March last year. So the investigators started at that point. They drew a huge circle on the map to show how far the plane could have gone in every direction with the fuel it had on board. And then, using various other bits of data, they gradually narrowed that down to little arcs that were possible flight paths, and then finally to specific geographical coordinates. Now, in doing that, they ruled out a lot of possibilities, and notably any northern flight paths at all. So that ruled out a bunch of things, and then it focused the search in particular regions of the Indian Ocean. But see, a lot of these calculations were very largely mathematical. The investigators were taking satellite data and fuel specifications and just plugging them into equations, and that's how they came up with their search coordinates. And look, there are a lot of assumptions kind of embedded in that approach. So in January this year, a Canadian mathematician called Brock McEwen published a report about all of these assumptions. He'd sat down to test them, and he was quite astonished by what he found. Now, his report is quite detailed and technical, but I think its conclusions are really startling, because basically he says two things. First, a lot of the assumptions were false, and he attempts to prove that mathematically. Second, he says some of the investigators' conclusions are so self-evidently false that we can't really put them down to honest mistakes. Or if they are honest mistakes, then the investigators have a lot of explaining to do, because they're basic and terrible mistakes in determining where they should search for the plane. Now, he even implies in this report, and a lot of other people have implied the same thing, that the search seems to have another priority, something not related to the plane. And his guess is that it may be a sneaky way of the Australian government justifying some expensive oil and gas exploration in the deep sea, using other people's fancy equipment and then getting the Australian taxpayer to pay for it all. So the idea is they're not choosing the locations where they're most likely to find the plane. They're choosing locations where they think there may be oil fields or subterranean deposits of natural gas, and then so they fit all the equations so they can go to those locations. And
well, maybe they're looking for lost treasure, because I know they found an underwater shipwreck during the search for MH370, didn't they?
Yeah, I believe that's true. Yeah. Now, ultimately, I mean, if that is true, and it is, it's speculation. It's not something that we should take at face value. Definitely not. But if that is true, then ultimately the beneficiaries will be the mining magnates who effectively run Australia, rather than the families of MH370. So the report is called MH370: Time to Investigate the Investigators, with a nice question mark on the title, and I think it's worth taking notice of. I read it with some difficulty, I have to say, because it is very mathematical, and I'm not sure whether I do support Brock McEwen's conclusions or not. It's hard to know for sure without any mathematical training, but he does present some persuasive arguments, and I think they deserve to be followed up.
And we're gonna really cover that in a lot more detail on another episode coming up soon.
Yeah. A couple of other things have happened though. In March, on the anniversary of the plane's disappearance, there was another report. This one was from Malaysian Airlines, and there were some really weird things in it. Actually, Sarah Bajak, who was a guest on this show last year, she's commented on this report and she criticised it fairly heavily. Just thought that listeners might like to know that. Listeners to remember Sarah's interview on True Sentinel. In particular, we know that the search for the plane has been predicated around detecting a signal from a beacon. Now, the beacon is attached to the flight data recorder, one of the black boxes. It has a locator beacon built into it so that the aircraft is easier to find if the plane goes down in the sea or in a jungle or whatever. But in this report, Malaysian Airlines say they'd examined the aircraft's maintenance records, and technicians had noted years ago that the battery which powers the locator beacon was due to expire in December of 2012, and since then it hadn't been replaced. So the airline says, you know, there's a little margin for error when you calculate the battery life, but basically, according to this report, that locator beacon died a long time ago, and there's never been any realistic chance of detecting a signal from it. So, you know, to me, that it seems utterly inconceivable that any investigation of an aircraft accident could go ahead without a thorough check of the maintenance records. You know, as an investigator, that's one of the first places you go to. You want interviews with relevant people like survivors, air traffic controllers, those people. You want wreckage to analyze, which according to what you're saying, they're not even going to try and get. And you want to know the aircraft's maintenance history. Now, in this case, they don't have wreckage, they don't have survivors. So any maintenance issues would just assume huge significance in the investigation. And so you have to ask, how is it possible that these investigators didn't know about this battery issue for a full year after the plane disappeared? To me, that is highly suspicious. Yeah.
I would also think, you know, everyone knows about the intensive checks that go on in an aeroplane before it takes off, and the maintenance checks, because people's lives are at stake. I find it hard to believe that that kind of thing gets overlooked. A battery, which is involving the one part of the plane that is vital for in any investigation should there be a crash, that could actually get to the stage where it's out of date or expired. I find that hard to believe.
I agree.
You know, if it was a remote control of your TV controller, yeah, that can be overlooked. But this is a plane, and this is the safety box involved in that plane.
I agree. Sometimes what happens in aviation is that you can't get the part on the right day, and there's a schedule to fill. And so if it's not critical, if we know that the airplane is not going to fall out of the sky without it, then the aircraft takes off without it. So that bit, I think it's plausible that you could have an aircraft operating without that battery, or knowing the battery is probably dead. But everything is logged, and that was logged in the main maintenance log. There is an entry saying this battery is going to run out, and that beacon is the whole basis of the search. So I just don't see how they could have missed it. One more thing. A couple of days after that report, which you know, I imagine must have embarrassed the investigators incredibly. So a couple of days after that, something really bizarre happened in Western Australia, and when I read about this, it kind of gave me shudders. You know, remember, this search is mainly happening off Australia's west coast now. So in a place called Suntes, north of Perth, a napkin, or a towelette, as they like to say, washed up on a beach, and the Australian mainstream press reported that it was an MH370 napkin. So, I mean, just tell me if you think the story tracks. First, they said the napkin was in a Malaysian Airlines package, right? 2 local residents found it when they were walking along the beach, and they took it to the local police station. So that's the first thing. The police then sent it to Canberra for analysis. We never find out what kind of analysis, but before it even reached Canberra, the media in Australia started quoting experts, and they were saying, you know, oh yes, we believe that a package this small could travel these distances, and so on. But then it gets really weird. After they brought the napkin in, one of the people who found it is a guy called Kingsley Miller. He was interviewed several times by the press, and at first the Australian media quoted him. They said, when he found the napkin, he said it never crossed his mind that this was anything to do with MH370, which it makes, yeah, I know, it makes absolutely zero sense, because what that means is a person found a piece of litter on a beach, thought of it as nothing more than a piece of litter, and took it to the police station for no particular reason. So that's just nuts. But then the Malaysian media reported on it, and they gave a different story. They quoted this guy Kingsley Miller's wife, Vicky. She said that he had said to her, "Let's look for MH370 stuff on this beach." So I don't know. I mean, the whole timing of this, relative to the Malaysian Airlines report, the two completely opposite and equally bizarre accounts of what was going through the heads of these people who found the napkin. It's all very strange. I really think that we're being sold a story here. What do you think, Scott?
I think so too. But I've got some questions for Seth, because MH370 has kind of disappeared out of the news in countries I've been travelling through, and I've got two questions for you. One, if you found a napkin, would you take it to the police station? And number two, has it disappeared? Has MH370 disappeared out of the news in the States?
Number one, no, and number two, absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty. The news on MH370 is pretty quiet, but it's one of the biggest conspiracies of our time, I think. So we're definitely going to have a look at that again. But there's another thing I wanted to mention about Odessa. I went to a restaurant here the other day, a very interesting restaurant, very different from restaurants in the UK. It's kind of like an open air restaurant, and it's called Dacha, basically, which for those who know a little bit of Russian, is kind of like a Russian country house. And it's a restaurant based on a country house. And you walk in and all the waiters and waitresses are dressed in green uniforms. And it kind of, when I walked in, it looked a bit like a hospital, and it was very quiet. And I'd never been to kind of open air, a really big open air restaurant before. And I actually thought I'd stumbled into kind of like like a hospital or something. So it looked like a hospital scenario, basically, almost like a cult. It did remind me of a cult, and that was a very long lead into our next story, which I know you've been looking at we covered cults, and one of the cults we covered was Heaven's Gate cult, and Seth, you had something to say about that, I believe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to remind everybody about our cults episode and the fact that, well, 2 cults episodes. I think we did a great job there, and then you did a whole episode of your interview with, was it Karen de la Carriere and Tony Ortega, which I thought were absolutely illuminating into Scientology there and everything, and finding out why it's, in some cases, it's not even necessarily a cult, as many people are led to believe. That's kind of a red herring to many people, as it is a scamming of the 501c3 tax exemption system.
What's that? You mean Scientology, yeah? Yeah. In that case, Scientology. But with this, we were talking about Heaven's Gate, which I just wanted to bring up because it's one of the more interesting cases we covered there and everything. Is this idea that people will cling to just about anything to be able to have some sort of identity here. And that's why in March of 1997, all 39 members of Heaven's Gate committed suicide. Pretty weird, of the phenobarbital mixed with vodka. Isn't that cool?
Pretty weird way to go. And their whole thing for the Star Trek type of stuff there in lingo, and the fact that one of the members who actually killed himself was the brother, younger brother of the woman who played Uhura on the original Star Trek.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's quite bizarre.
Oh, very bizarre, especially with the fact that this would be your older sister that knows all of this stuff and that has been on the show and everything, and she's an actress, it's your sister and all this, but for some reason somebody tells you that the Star Trek stuff is it's pretty much reality, and there's like a Star Trek alien ship waiting behind the Hale-Bopp comet, and we're gonna drink phenobarbital mixed with vodka to elevate ourselves to the spiritual alien spacecraft and fly off into the unknown. Oh, with 5 quarters. I forgot because it's with a $1.25 in whatever space toll.
God. Oh dear. We need to talk about the at some future point on Truth Sentinel. We need to talk about the connection between Heaven's Gate and the psychics who predicted, or not predicted, but claimed to have made contact with the object that was behind the comet. We've touched on the issue of psychic powers on Truth Sentinel, and I think it's something that we should try to explore a little bit more, because there are a lot of kind of incidents going on in that area at the moment.
Wasn't that on Coast to Coast radio? Was that with Art Bell, or was that with another?
That's correct. He had a guest on the show. I don't remember her last name. First name was Prudence, and she was the one who announced this, and the members of Heaven's Gate heard the announcement, and that was what prompted them to gather their change and get ready for the flight to the mothership. So yes.
So Seth, I watched the video with the leader of Heaven's Gate cult. That was the bald-headed guy, wasn't it?
Marshall Applewhite, yeah.
Marshall Applewhite, yeah. Apparently he used to be a music teacher, and he was well liked. And when I watched the video of him talking, because we obviously covered that in our previous episode, he was kind of he didn't strike me as mad, although he does have slightly odd looking features, but I can see why people might spend some time listening to him, because he was kind of he's got a nice way about him. Sorry, I should talk in the past tense. He had a nice way about him. But what did you make of the guy himself?
I thought your take on it was pretty good there. He in a lot of ways had a lot of characteristics of like a politician, a sociopath that could be a cult of personality, bringing people around him. But I believe you probably picked up on it while watching the video. I know Anthony probably certainly did if he watched that video. But his eyes speak volumes there as far as the craziness with all of this stuff and the cult-like mentality and everything like that. He's literally just out of his mind, and you can see it on there when he's talking. It's all behind his eyes.
Just a quick advert break. Our email is scottsentinel9@gmail.com. Check out our past episodes. We've got lots of interesting guests, and you can find us on YouTube on 2 channels. We talk about conspiracies, mysteries, injustices, corruption, religion, war, peace. You can leave your own message, and we can base our show around what you think. That's what we intend to do. Check out our website, www.truthsentinel.co.uk. That's www.truthsentinel.co.uk. You can find the latest episodes on there and links to start a recording, so you can leave a message for us, which we can put on the show. And you'll find a chat room there, and Twitter, and other accounts like Facebook. So you can find everything there. Go and check it out. Help us find the truth in the news. Find our YouTube channels. We've got all the episodes on there. Truth Sentinel and Truth Sentinel 1. Subscribe to both so you get notified of everything. Click on the About section, you'll find all the links. Have you got something you'd like to advertise? If it's truth related, honest and ethical, get in contact. You can help us, we can help you. We sell our own t-shirts with "The greatest enemy of truth is blind belief in authority" on the back. Just $20 plus postage and packing. Let us know your size. Just send us an email. We can sort it out. We've also teamed up with trutht-shirts.com, and they make political t-shirts. Let people know where you stand, basically. Use the code TRUTH1. You get a 10% discount, and we get a donation. They make all kinds of political t-shirts, and they can customize them for you as well. If you've got any ideas for publicity stunts, get in contact. We need to escalate this channel, make it much bigger. We need your help. Please support us. Thank you. Here's a chat I had with Anthony. We weren't going to have this as part of the show, but then we thought, why the heck not? We basically talk about the origins of life and get onto simulated universes and time itself. So, hope you enjoy it.
I really don't think that all scientists or even most scientists are so virulently anti-religion.
I think there should be a separation from the design theory and religion, because in some ways, you could come up with a theory that doesn't even require God, that fits into design theory, using a similar thing to the guys who wrote that book, Who Built the Moon. Maybe humans designed the Earth. Maybe in the future humans become so advanced they can start creating their own universes. And in the future, we start creating universes and planets, and then we go back in time and create our own planet. And that's
we don't even have to go. We don't even have to go back in time. I'm sure you've come across the simulation theory. Yeah?
Well, exactly. Or this is a simulation. So that would fit into a design theory.
Yeah, and actually, if it's possible at all to simulate the universe, right? Then it's been done more than once. Does that make sense? Did you follow that?
Yeah, definitely. I heard a scientist talking about that, and it actually disturbed me slightly. This guy was convinced this is a simulation that we're living in. He said basically, there will in the future there'll be many attempts to create simulations.
Yeah, because if you could do it, like, it wouldn't be the kind of thing that one scientist would do once and go, "Look, everyone, I simulated a universe," and all other scientists would go, "Oh, that's very nice," and just get on with what they were doing. Like, if one person works out how to do it, many others will try it, which means there will be more simulated universes than real ones, which means ours is more likely to be a simulation.
He actually, using probability, he said the chances of us not being in a simulation, it was a scary thing to say. He said the chances that this isn't a simulated universe is extremely low. He actually and that was quite disturbing, because maybe we are
from a certain point of view, but only if you're 100% sure, or at least you think there's a high probability that the technique will be possible. Do you know what I mean? And we can't predict that. So if at some point
I would say it seems feasible, though, doesn't it?
It does seem feasible, but then so did flying cars. We don't have them.
They'll eventually happen.
Well, and look, jetpacks have happened as well. But do you see them all over the world? No.
They're expensive at the moment. They're too expensive. But as most things, they'll eventually become cheaper.
Well, maybe, but I think there's a good chance, but I don't think we can say that for sure. You know what I mean? And in a similar way, we can look at the current state of technology and go that at a certain point, people will be able to simulate a universe. That seems to make sense, but we can't know for sure that it will happen. If it happens, then the probability that we're a simulation goes through the roof. If for some reason it doesn't happen, then we just are who we are, and we're not simulated. So, or if, and there are plenty of other possibilities, like, for example, it starts to happen and then something really disastrous occurs because of that, and it stops, In
some ways, isn't a creation theory very similar to a simulated universe theory anyway? God doesn't have to be God would be the person that created the simulated universe. In which case, this, let's say it's the God of the Bible. That would be, if you look at a simulated universe idea, 7 days to create a simulated universe might not be such a crazy idea.
That's actually a good point.
He's just basically making, basically his friend saying to him, "How long did it take you to make this program?" He's like, "Oh, it took me all week."
Well, if he's a simulator, he's probably done it all before, right? So he could then take some of the settings that he previously used and just kind of mess around with them for a week or so, and go, "Oh, I like this version," and then put it online, and you're done. So
And then he says, "Let there be light." So he's basically hitting keys, and he's made a computer system where he can just hit keys, and it's like, let me just adjust the brightness. Let there be light. Okay, let's have some animals. We need to make a man and a woman. Let's make the man. No, because the woman came second. He was like, oh, we need a companion for the man. Let's have a woman.
That means this guy, who's essentially a computer geek, he invented sex, because he would have been like, we have to have some way for these things to, you know, like produce offspring, and then he came up with this way to do it, which has turned out to be one of the most problematic features of human existence. Well done, computer nerd. Well, I mean, how many people get, you know, like stoned to death in religious societies because of their, you know, because they're adulterers? How many people are, you know, anxious about their physical appearance because they feel sexually unattractive? How many people are branded sluts? You know, like
it is very true that God, in any even in the simulated universe theory I was talking about, or creation, God, of course, God invented sex. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, like in all the books that theorize about who this computer nerd is, there are all these rules about it. You know, like when you can do it, when you can't do it, which versions of it you can do. So it's a pretty bad invention, really.
That would be ironic in a way, though, that if God does turn out to be a computer geek who made a simulated universe, and if there are some scientists out there who are very anti-creation. Well, the ones I came across on Twitter were anyway. It would be ironic that it was someone similar to them that actually invented the universe in the first place.
Yeah. But again, like, you know, bear in mind, these are, I mean, and we talked about this on the show, like, these are the fundamentalist evolutionists. I really, really don't like them. But I don't think they're typical of the scientific community. They're like, it's similar to, in a way, I think, it's similar to religion. You've got your religious people who are like, yeah, you know, there's a God. You know, I may not go to church, but I believe there's something more, and, you know, like I live a spiritual life, and sometimes I pray to God to help me in difficult situations, la 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 la. But they don't go around saying to people who have a different belief, you're an idiot and you're going to hell, right? Most religious people don't do that, right? And it's the same in science, I think. You know, people obviously have their beliefs, but there's a with religion, there's a fringe of people who are running around going, you're going to hell if you don't do this, this, and this. And there's a fringe of scientific people going, you're an idiot if you don't believe this, this, and this. So
maybe, I don't know. We'd have to check the figures or do a survey. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it would be an interesting one to do, because sometimes things are perhaps more common than they seem to be, and people. Perhaps there are more scientists who feel that way than there seem to be. To me, there seem to be, you know, obviously some, but not that many. Yeah. But then when you look at those,
it's like, interesting. I mean, because if God was a computer technician, basically, an extremely gifted one, maybe, or maybe just I would say he must be fairly good at his job. That means there could be more. So, you know, it would sort of bring up the question of who created God. Well, his mother and father did, and there's other computer technicians who've done their own simulated universes.
Yep. But it gets to that, you know, infinite totals problem eventually, doesn't it? Well, who created the simulator? You know,
that's going to that infinite thing is going to happen with it just about any theory, though. But it is interesting. It's kind of scary in a way, because I think it applies to any particular theory. It's always going to be, well, what came before that? It's kind of it's scary for our brains to comprehend.
The only theories which avoid that are theories which say that the secret to the universe's creation is actually inside it, and you don't need an external force to set it in motion. Those theories are...
Yeah, but even if you don't need anything to set it in motion, it's a starting point where it gets set in motion, and what was there before that starting point?
Well, see, this is where these theories started to gain popularity, and I don't think any of them have really succeeded yet, but I think there's some potential that they might succeed. But where it all started was when people started to realize that the universe didn't have an infinite age. So like for a long time people thought, oh, the universe has just been around forever. It's eternal. God's eternal. The universe is eternal, obviously. And then, science advanced a little bit, and they went, actually, it looks like the universe isn't eternal. It looks like it started at some point, right? So, I think there are now some doubts about that too. Like, there are people who are saying, well, actually, the evidence for the Big Bang isn't as strong as we initially thought. So, fair enough. But this is where the idea came from. So the universe has a beginning, and everyone goes, okay, so if it has a beginning, then somebody had to press start or whatever. But then it turned out that when the Big Bang happened, it didn't happen in time. So what happened with the Big Bang was that time got created, okay? And then space got created, and space got created at the same moment. So if time got created at that moment, then there's no before in which somebody could have pressed the start button. So that sort of opens up the whole thing to like a whole different level of what the because you can't say before the Big Bang somebody made it happen, because before the Big Bang is not a concept according to the theory of the Big Bang.
I agree, but I think time is crucial in all the theories, because I think maybe I don't think we understand time well enough. I think maybe it's not what we think, and that's why when coming to the age of the universe and things like that, maybe we've got it completely wrong because we don't really understand time. I was thinking today, and let me know what you whether this applies. I may have made some logical mistakes, I don't know, but I was thinking about an ant hill today, and so there was ants in it, and they and say they saw a piece of bread in the distance, and they were looking at it, and they'd already made a calculation system. These ants can communicate, by the way, and it was say 100 antometers away, and one antometer is the length of an ant.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd had their own measuring system, and they figured that basically it would take a year to walk to get to this bit of bread, because they can see it's about 100 antometers away or something. It usually takes about a year to get there, and that's how I think maybe we've determined time, is that because we look at the sun and the distance away and the speed light would travel to get here. But then I thought, well, but what if a human stood above the anthill and dropped a piece of bread near the anthill, and they did that, but while the ants weren't looking, the ants would turn around, see the bit of bread, and say, "Oh, that must have been there. Like a year, because it's 100 antometers away." But actually, it hasn't. It was dropped from above, and it landed in that place. And so they're observing that thing and thinking it had been there for so long, because that's the distance. Time and distance seem to be connected. Maybe outside forces could have changed things or pushed things in. If this is a simulated universe, for example, the sun's distance and some of the distances we look at and use time to calculate their age may be completely irrelevant, because they were created in an instant, and all the distances have no relevance to how old they are.
Okay, well, all right. So wow. There's a lot of stuff in there. First, I want to say I completely agree with you about us not understanding time. I think it's something that there's probably a lot to it that we just don't get. But at the same, in the same breath, time and distance are connected, because time is, how can we put it? Time is basically an interval during which something happens, right? Or doesn't happen. and one of the things that can happen is that stuff can move. So time tells you what interval is necessary in order to get like any object from point A to point B, right? And that aspect of it, I think we understand pretty well. Like, because it's fairly simple. If you start a journey in, say, Paris, right, and you want to go to Berlin, and Berlin is, I don't know, let's say 500 kilometers away, a car traveling at 100 kilometers an hour will take 5 hours to get there, and another car traveling at 50 kilometers an hour will take 10 hours to get there, right? That aspect of time, I think we understand pretty well. And it's not that hard, really. So then, we talk about the distance from the sun and all that sort of thing. Well, sunlight takes 8 minutes to reach the Earth because light travels at a certain speed, which we think we know, and I'm a little unsure as to whether we really know that speed or not, but I think we probably do, because many processes are based on it, right? But anyway, so this is the idea. It takes 8 minutes to reach the Earth because it's 93 million miles away, and light travels at speed x, which means it takes 8 minutes to travel 93 million miles. Again, it's the same math that you would use for the cars traveling to Berlin. It's just the same, only with higher speeds, But I mean, in terms of finding something in the ground, for example, and saying how much time has elapsed since, let's say it's a skeleton, a fossil, how much time has elapsed since this animal died here? That's a completely different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but with if we stick with the simulated universe for a second, a lot of people talk about, they look at rocks and they say, well, this has got so many ions in it that we know it takes this long for so many to appear. It must be millions of years old, and they don't like it if they basically people say, well, did God deliberately try and make the Earth look older? But if God is a computer technician, he didn't try and make it look older. It's just that the software, when it creates rocks, already has that amount of ions in it. He wasn't trying to trick people. The technician is just making software rocks, And they appeared in an instant. They just happen to have billions of ions already in it to give it density.
Okay. So yes, all right. I can see that possibility. I can also see another possibility. If the universe is a simulation, then time as we experience it might not be going at the rate we experience it as.
Yeah.
So and also you could speed it up and slow it down if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So you'd have to make, so if you've got certain rules in your universe, like for example ions decay at a certain rate, right, and you want them to hurry up so that you can get to something interesting, then you have to quite up the entire simulation, because so I mean, this is very, very speculative, but I think you could do that quite easily with using some kind of technology. So instead of violating thousands of different rules, you just change one setting and time just goes really, really quick, and that's all. Well, but it's sort of like.
I was going to say, if this is a computer simulated universe, maybe one day, that when the computer technician's finished munching on a packet of crisps and watching his favorite program, he might just think, that Earth program I made 5 years ago, I'm going to just hit the speed up button because I want to see what happens, 1,000 years from now. He kind of forgot about it for a while.
But all the rules
about it, but then one day he'll hit the button and the speed of light will be accelerated as he press forward wind, and everyone will die in the space of a second, and new babies will be born in the space of a second, and everyone will wonder what the hell's going on. But he's just hit the fast forward key.
Well, that's very possible too. But I think, I mean, time. The experience of time is subjective, right? And it sort of has to be. And I think it's the kind of thing where I think you could turn the dial and make it all go faster, and people would still experience it the same. And the reason why I say that also comes back to biology, because there's fairly strong evidence that how we experience time running depends on the speed of our heartbeat. So the average macroorganism, so forgetting microbes and stuff for a bit, the average macroorganism, be it a bird or a cow or a person, has about 8 billion heartbeats. Obviously that's an average, Some people die in car wrecks when they're 2. Some cows live for 20 years. But the average number of beats that a heart can do is about 8 billion, which I think is an incredible fact in itself. I'm surprised that that's not quoted more often, because it doesn't matter whether you're a hummingbird or a person, you've got 8 billion heartbeats. And yeah, so but because of that, it seems that that for, let's take hummingbirds as an example, because they're really interesting and bizarre. When they're in their thing and their hearts are beating at full speed, they beat incredibly fast, like, thousands of beats a minute kind of thing. And when that is happening, they experience time as rolling forward very, very quickly, right? Now, the effect of that is to slow things down. Actually, probably a better example would be a fly. This also happens to flies, right? And this explains why it's so difficult to catch them and to kill them. Is because they're seeing everything going forward very, very quickly, right? So to them, our movements seem very slow. So like our attempt to swat the fly would take half an hour in fly time, because their entire life is going fast. They perceive time as going very, very quickly. Like in a minute of human time, there's hours of fly time. So they're seeing us coming at us with a hand or a swatter or whatever, and it's like it's going in super slow motion. They've got tons of time. They can clean themselves and still get out of the way. So, and that's because of the speed of their heartbeat. So it means that time is a subjective experience.
I think time is a subjective experience,
yeah. Interesting in itself. These creatures around us see time in a completely different way. I mean, that's just fucking mind-blowing,
Well,
anyway.
even we can experience time in we can get a flavour of that. If you're late for an important interview, you feel there isn't enough time.
I also, and it works on a sort of macro level as well. I mean, some years seem to fly by and others seem to last forever,
You do, definitely. When you're younger, I think time seems to move slower. But I remember long, hot summers that just seemed to go on forever.
Yep.
And as I got older, they just sort of flew by, yeah.
I think that's because you've got a lot less to compare it to. So you're comparing like the experiences that you have every passing day with all the experiences that you've had before. I don't know about that. I'm not sure about this. I'm just kind of making this up as I go. So you've got like a memory bank full of, let's say, 5 summers, and this one summer that you're having now is a huge portion of all the summer that you've ever had, right? Mm. So, but when you're 40, it's not. It's like 2% as opposed to 20%. So it doesn't seem that huge. I don't know. And I've thought about that particular point a lot, because it really changed for me when I became an English teacher. I had, in my late 20s and the first couple of years of my 30s, I was having that feeling of like time is speeding up. I'm getting older a lot more quickly, and years just seem to pass like in the blink of an eye, And then when I became an English teacher, that stopped. Years sort of went back to their normal length, I suppose you could say, because I was like doing stuff, doing things that were sort of worthwhile and filled my life with detail and little milestones and stuff, and that made the years just seem much longer than they did up to that.
I think if you're leading a relatively interesting life, then life will go a bit slower. But if you're doing the same thing every day, I don't know actually whether that would slow life down or whether it would speed it up. I don't know.
Well, see, I think it slows it down, and I think that's actually. Like, I haven't really learned many of the secrets of life, but I think that's one that I've actually learned for myself, that if you want to feel that you're living a long life, then you have to do stuff. You can't just sitting at home and acquiring more goods. This is one of the reasons why I'm so anti-consumerist. Sitting at home and acquiring more goods doesn't make your life longer, but going out and having experiences does.